There are a few things you may need to do for your finances before the end of the year to get the best possible conditions in this spring's declaration. At the same time, some law changes make you need to think a little extra. Here are the tips you need. The tax on ISK will be slightly higher by 2026 than 2025, 1.065%. This means 1,065 Swedish kroner in tax per 100,000 Swedish kroner in savings, compared to 890 Swedish kroner this year. But above all, the tax-free basic level of ISK and capital insurance is gratifying enough from 150,000 Swedish kroner to 300,000 Swedish kroner. This means that the tax of 1,065% only applies to savings in excess of 300,000 Swedish kroner. The tax-free basic level means that the cutoff point when it pays to save on ISK compared to the depot is lowered. For 2026, the general cutoff point is 3.55%. But with the extended basic deduction, it falls to 1.4% for a savings capital of 500,000 Swedish kroner and 2.4% at 1 million Swedish kroner, according to a calculation from Landsförsäkringar. It can be good to think about an extra time when it comes to money that is actually meant to go to the child in a child saving. Of course, it is tempting to write child savings in the child's name to receive the basic level of tax-free, which applies per person. But then it is good to have in the back of your mind that savings that are written in the child's own name automatically accrue to the child when he or she turns 18. It does not have to be a problem, but it may be desirable as a parent to be in control of the money and be able to control when they are allowed to be taken out and what to do. But then it is savings in the parent's name of capital insurance with the child as a beneficiary that applies. Do you get a lot back on the tax, for example if you have high interest costs? If you don't have to wait for you to get money back on the tax, and you pay the right tax from the beginning, you can apply for adjustment directly on the Swedish Tax Agency's website with e-identification. But be careful not to adjust too much and instead suffer from residual tax. Do you have stocks or funds on regular depot that has been at a loss and that you intend to sell off? If so, do so before the end of the year, in order to offset loss against securities gains in the spring declaration. This is not possible if you own the securities via a flat-rate savings form, such as ISK or capital insurance. However, you can set off the flat-rate income on ISK against capital losses in the declaration. Are you going to sell off funds from regular depot? Then it might be wise to do so before the end of the year. Then you avoid the fund tax of 0.12%, flat rate 0.4*30% on the capital base that is otherwise levied in fund tax on the depot on January 1st. Since the return tax on is deducted on December 31st from your capital insurance, it is recommended to have cash on the capital insurance on that day. Otherwise, Nordnet will try to sell off securities to cover the return tax. I am sometimes asked if it is worthwhile to withdraw money for the year before the turn of the year and then deposit them afterwards to avoid having a lot of money in the account when the tax should be deducted. It is not. Deposits to capital insurance are taxed as much as the input value at the beginning of the year. At ISK, the tax is deducted in connection with the declaration. If you have used RUT or ROOT during the year, it must be reported in the spring declaration. Root and square deductions are tax reductions that are calculated together and are a maximum of 75,000 Swedish kroner per person per year. The root deduction may not exceed 50,000 Swedish kroner per year. However, the root deduction was raised from 30% to 50% in the period the 12th of May December 31st, 2025. The increase is temporary and applies to work where payment is made between the 12th of May and the 31st of December 2025. The application for payment for payments made in 2025 shall be made by the 31st of January 2026. Root and square deductions apply per person. The deduction is automatically distributed on the person on the invoice. There may be reason to redistribute the deduction if you are two people. If one of you is near the roof, then the rest can be redistributed on the other. Another reason to allocate if the root deduction is if one of you has low income and therefore cannot use the maximum deduction. Redistribution can be done by asking the craftsman to change the invoice, or you can change the distribution in the e-service for declarations at the Swedish tax agency. If you want to maximize the deduction, you will of course distribute the deduction as evenly as possible between two people in a household. The interest deduction for home loans can also be redistributed if necessary. Review the distribution of interest payments on home loans so that the interest deduction you have for all interest costs can be used to the maximum.